Hello, fellow parents and educators. Thank you for joining me at Education Evolution, where we are disrupting the status quo in today's learning models. We talk about present-day education, what's broken, who's fixing it, and how. I'm Dr. Maureen O'Shaughnessy, your host and founder of Education Evolution and the Microschool Coalition, where we are fiercely committed to changing the narrative, to reimagining the education landscape and creating learning that serves all children and prepares them to thrive. Welcome, Julie Burgess-Dennis. Julie and her colleague are the owners of Seattle's Under the Umbrella, and you guys create opportunities for children to meet their potential in speech, language, social communication. You do a lot, and you have a really cool office with a swing. So tell us just a little bit about you.
Oh, thank you, Maureen. So I am a speech language pathologist. I've been practicing for over 20 years now. And the Under the Umbrella came to be about 6 years ago when both my colleague and I were a little tired of being in the box, being with more traditional. We wanted a more family-based, friendly environment that welcomed people and really allowed for natural social engagement, as opposed to more contrived, creating groups, creating artificially settings to elicit some of the goals we were working on. We wanted it to be more naturalistic. So our space is a big part of our therapy. So yeah, that's our specialty. That's what I love to do.
Yay! Julie, I know that your SLP support is usually with the child, but not necessarily woven into the child's full day, nor do your insights inform the learning that the student receives at school. This silo approach really limits effectiveness. Tell our listeners what it's like when you're in the silo versus out of the silo and how that changes what the student gets.
Well, I think getting out of the silo is super important. And again, that was when my colleague and I got together. While I have a home base at Under the Umbrella and it serves many functions, I think it's essential that not only do we get into the school, but we push in. We still are doing a very pull-out model across public schools and a lot of schools across the country. And there's sometimes a place and a need. I mean, I think you have to develop relationship in a quiet setting and get to know a person. But in general, I really think our services are going to be much better utilized if we are pushing into the classroom and working with teachers and helping these kids learn. I mean, learning is social, right? It is a social communication ability. It's about emotional regulation and social communication and doing it throughout the day. So I've been shifting my career into moving away from segmenting and doing all one-on-one, right? And again, a piece of it is super important. I'll never give away all my one-on-one because I love building a relationship with those that I work with. But if we can start shifting more into being in that classroom and working with those teachers and developing individual systems for those kids and those teachers to be using throughout the day, it just seems, it'll be much more beneficial. I think we'll get better generalization, just happier kids, happier teachers.
I completely agree. And I know firsthand because we are one of the schools that gets to have you supporting us. And we have you looking at our whole school and the learning environment, training our teachers, sharing your insights, weaving in parents. It is so push-in, integrated, and collaborative. Can you think of a specific scenario or example of how this is played out for a student of yours?
With the push-in model, that's there's so many examples. I'm trying to think of just one. But with the push-in model, what naturally happens is you start building more of a relationship with the teachers. And I think that's been underutilized in years, where everybody had relationships, particularly in schools, right? But they still did their own thing, right? Kind of in isolation, but coming together. And with doing more of a push-in and like working with your staff, we've all gotten to know each other so much more so that we can even when you work with one kid, you're building where those skills can go on to other children and different things. And we start learning how each of us come to the same problem or a different problem. There are several kids where we've had major ahas together, right? I don't know everything about these kids. I mean, the teachers really know so much. It always comes back to relationship building. There's been several kids where we've all had some ahas together that you wouldn't have guessed maybe if you had been looking at it in a more isolated way. Or if I was back in my clinic working with a Tyler and, calling Jacob and saying, well, this is what we're doing and trying to glue it together in that way. That's the more traditional way, right? Where instead I'm in the school, I'm with Tyler, I can make eye contact with Jacob, your teacher, Casey, and we can work together in a real-time moment to help support him.
I love that. I know as a classroom teacher, I knew kids had to leave for speech and leave for OT and leave for different things. And then they came back and I just had to get them caught up. I had no idea what was going on, how I could reinforce any of that. It was a mystery that just the kid came and went. And I'm so grateful that at LEADPrep, we get you specialists and we call you our dream team because it's so amazing to have an SLP, OT, behaviorist, special needs person, therapist. We get all these perspectives and you're trained in different ways and you're helping us see kids so much more holistically. So we are super grateful.
Wow. And it's fun. I think we're all having a really, when you can bring joy to it and do that through relationship and really getting to know each other, it just adds to the progress.
Yes, absolutely. And fun and joy, those are so important for all of us. And teachers burn out with too intensive of loads. So to lighten things up and to collaborate is really a good way to take care of our teachers as well.
For sure. Teachers have been the forgotten group, right? We expect so much of them. And I'm really cognizant of that right now because I think our teachers are as driven and burdened as our first responders in this pandemic we're in. And there's not a lot of talk about it yet, Maureen. And I wish we could find a venue. Our teachers are working so hard and are so stressed. I just talked to my nephew who's in his mid-30s and he and his wife are both teachers and they have 2 children under the age of 3. And it was so fascinating to listen to a day in the life that they are getting through. I mean, they're both working. They both have to manage the little kid. It's remarkable. Teachers are remarkable and they have many hats. And those of us that are therapists just need to be really just embrace their challenges and join them as opposed to, I'm really kind of against the kind of expert model where I almost feel like the expert causes more issues than help sometimes because we need to join our teachers and be a part of their problem as opposed to coming in and saying, well, this is the way you need to do it because they're in the trenches and we need to join them there and pat them on the back as much as we possibly can. They're working so hard.
I completely agree. I think they are definitely unsung heroes, especially now. Yeah. And we've shifted our professional development model as a result of having you as a dream team. We don't want to go to one-off conferences or have an expert come in and dispense wisdom and then disappear. We love that you're adding layers of support to us. And one I wanted to hit on is you had us read Uniquely Human last summer. And under the umbrella, you have extensive training and experience in social communication and also working with children with autism. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that plays out in terms of social communication in schools?
Yeah, what a great, that could get us here for hours, right? But absolutely. First of all, back to what you just said about like continuing education. There have been so many models where really talented people have either come into a school district and spent, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 days with the staff and they leave and they offer a great deal, right? These are really well-trained, terrific public speakers that really have it down. And that's great. But the problem is they do leave. And I've talked to professional after professional that it was wonderful. It was great. We had a lot of great ideas. But then with each month, right, you get farther and farther away from that day of training and the books sit on the shelf and a little bit of dust gets on them and that grows. And what I love, and I've done this with a couple schools and I'm really enjoying it with you, is that we start with our training, we individualize it to what your needs are, and then we're here. we're local. We stay here. We're here as you need us so that we can keep building and individualizing to your school as opposed to a very expensive one time. And again, I don't want to knock any of my amazing colleagues because there's a lot to get from that model as well. But a combination is so good. It's autism that has brought me, I think, even to you, Maureen, and helping, all learning I see in the classroom and outside the classroom is social driven. So social and emotional regulation. And we've got to get into the classroom and help not only the teachers, but the kids with autism really be able to engage and access their education. Traditionally, we've been such a behavioral model, and we can see the pros and cons. And I think for helping to get rid of truly unwanted behaviors that prevent an individual from being in an environment, I think that's super important to use a behavioral approach. But with learning, we just simply don't learn in that way. And we need to find other avenues, other supports, other learning techniques, understanding individual profiles to best meet the needs of these kids.
Absolutely. Some of the pointers that you have shared with our team actually helped me as a mom with a young adult daughter with autism. There's so much about social communication that's just critical for kids surviving the school scene, surviving the work scene, navigating their lives. So your lens is so important. And so often I think we somehow we get it wrong. We make judgments, not understanding, and especially their peers make judgments. Well, that was rude.
Yep.
And they label a kid because they have no sense of, whoa, this kid doesn't have a filter, or this kid was trying to fit in. And we really have to be more humane in understanding that whole social communication lens.
Right. And all those underlying challenges that we can't see, right? We're very focused on what we can see. And I think that's what we react to. And that's behaviors, right? We can see behaviors. We can touch behaviors. They're right in front of us and we want to redirect them. And in the moment, sometimes that's very appropriate. You've got a classroom of kids and you've got to keep, you got to keep it together. You got to keep it glued together. But that doesn't mean that we can't come back and look at all the underlying factors that are contributing to these behaviors that we're seeing. And it's that we need to be addressing, those underlying pieces, because they're all different, right? Even the same behavior might be caused by 10 different underlying things that we're just not even aware of yet.
That's something you've really helped our team at is looking beyond the behaviors and let the behaviors inform us as opposed to just stopping with the behavior. So I think that's a huge transition for educators to get to make, just that one step.
Yeah. And it's so hard. I think that's the thing too, is we have to be really forgiving of each other, that we're human and we're emotional too. And we're doing our best and we're working hard, and it's really challenging. It also takes participation from the family. As you and I have discussed, many kids where really kids came to you with little information that you were able to gain after they were admitted to your school. And so transparency and families being on board, right? And, recognizing that we're all doing the best that we can, including our student, and moving in a positive way from there.
Absolutely. I love this holistic approach and getting all the players on board and working together. Julie, I have a final question for you.
Yes.
If you had an amazing, glittery, sparkly, wonderful magic wand, what would you create for our students' learning experiences?
Do you mean at your school or in general, like our
in the world?
Yeah. Well, I'm really keen on these small micro schools. And I do feel like if I had a magic wand, I would take all these ginormous school districts and I would pare them down. I feel like bureaucracy has really gotten in our way of some really terrific leaders and terrific teachers getting kind of buried, right? And so this concept of a micro school where everybody really knows each other, I mean, for me, it's always going to come back down to relationship and how trusting and supportive your relationships are with your professionals, your students, and your families. And it just makes sense that if it's smaller, it's going to be much more achievable. So that would be my magic wand, is to really make this shift into smaller schools and really getting professionals to push in and to really relook at the model. When you look at the public school model, it's still speech pathologists and OTs and PTs, and it's the pullout. Now, this isn't all, because some are doing some really great work, really educating teachers and working as hard as they can. But the system's not designed for that. Those are really overachieving professionals that understand the need for collaboration. The system in itself is still really segregated, right? That you have everybody that has their specialty. And, I almost don't even refer myself as a speech language pathologist when I'm first introducing myself, Maureen, because right away people think, oh, you just work on speech and articulation, which is the least of what I do professionally. And I still do it. I love motor speech disorders. And I love thinking about speech, but it's definitely not prominent in my practice. So I really wish we'd say we're specialists in autism, or we're developmental specialists, or we're behavioral specialists, or definitely leaning to speech and language, because I do have a lot of training in that, and that is my primary field. But getting more collaborative and more transdisciplinary. Smaller schools, more transdisciplinary, more push in. I would love to see that shift in our field and get away from the medical model, which I think is kind of, it has its good and it has its bad. And I think it got tried to apply to education, and we got a little lost, I think.
I absolutely agree. And to that first point of the micro schools, I taught in a high school early days with 700 kids per grade. And when I got to start a school within a school, and we had 30 kids, we had like 90, but 30 kids a block and 90 kids throughout the day that 5 of us shared. It was so relational. When we lose the relational piece, especially with so much more online and disconnection these days, and caution, kids don't run out and play with each other, that relational piece, without that, I just think it's really, teachers are operating at a disadvantage in those huge schools. And then the time to collaborate and have these interdisciplinary teams that you're talking about that can go across the subjects is lost. So I think your magic wand needs to happen for our learners around the world.
Well, and I do think it slowly is, to be honest with you. I'm not the only one out there with this mindset. I do think this is a beginning. We're in the beginning phases of it, and education is going to shift. It's going to have to shift, Maureen, because now that we have this pandemic, that's going to layer a whole nother, what it looks like for us in the future as learners, as educators, as teachers. But we're already on this, looking at how we've been doing it for the last 150 years and moving forward into a different way. We have to prepare these kids for a different work setting. So it's a pretty amazing time right now. Yeah.
It definitely is. And Julie, thank you. Thank you for all you do for kids. And thank you for the joy you bring students, teachers, parents. You obviously really care about kids, and your laughter and positive perspective are such a breath of fresh air. And we're so grateful to have you at our micro school. And I'm grateful to have you on today's podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm one of those lucky few, Maureen, that I absolutely love my job passionately. So I feel really grateful. Thank you.
Yay. Well, thank you. I appreciate having you on our show today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Julie Burgess-Dennis is so wonderful. We call this team of specialists that we've formed over the last year and a half our dream team. It is so powerful to get to look at each unique learning profile through these lenses. It reminds me of the story of the blind men and the elephant, where each one of them was touching a different part of the elephant and describing the elephant if they were touching the trunk or the tail or the ear. It really, really helps us to hear from an OT perspective, an SLP perspective, from behaviors, from our teacher, from our parents, from our students, to get the whole picture of the student. I really appreciate what Julie says about we need these transdisciplinary approaches. We need to break down the silos to make this happen. And she has been the leader of our dream team in helping us have these multiple lenses. Julie and our dream team have also helped us with our MTSS, and that is the multi-tiered system of support. Every school should have universal supports that we offer all students. That should just be tier 1 and a given. And then tier 2 should be when you need to have a small group and help some kids that need a little extra support. Tier 3 might be when you need one-on-one support and something really specific to a given kid. And we've been able to develop that, and we're informed with the perspective of our different members of our dream team. They also come in and provide professional development for us. So over the summer, we spent time chewing sour gum and understanding more about senses and sensory needs of different kids. That was our OT giving us some background on different aspects of students and learners. We get to see through so many lenses. It is priceless. So I would wish for every school, just like Julie said, let's be transdisciplinary. Let's be collaborative. Let's get rid of that medical clinical model, one expert for one part of the human body, and really look holistically. And please, let's get smaller. We need relationships in a segment of 1,000 to 2,000 kids is not going to happen. We can break our big into smaller. Many schools do that. Many schools have a school within a school, or special programs or special cohorts or loops where kids stay with a teacher for more than 1 year. Let's get small, let's get personalized, and let's create these teams of learning support for all of our students. If you're finding yourself thinking, I need to do this in my school, let's talk about it. Earlier this year, I got to present models for diverse learners for the South American Inclusion School of 2020 conference. There are many ways to enhance the holistic support of our learners. Let's create an action plan together. Visit educationevolution.org/consult to book a call, and let's get started. Education Evolution listeners, you are the ones to ensure we create classrooms where each student is seen, heard, valued, and thriving. We need you. Let's go out and reach every student today. Leaving a rating and review for this podcast lets others know that you find it of value and gets it in the earbuds of more educational leaders like you. Thank you for listening. Signing off, I am Maureen O'Shaughnessy, your partner in boldly reimagining education.